Hi, I'm Iris, the designer behind Iris Makes, and today I'm going to show you how to knit the double knitted bottom band of the Melissa cardigan. So here I have the body of the Melissa cardigan with the neckline facing already done, and you can find a tutorial for that in the previous video. So I have two unfinished edges along the vertical front of the cardigan. So the first thing I'm going to do is pick up stitches along the right bottom band, or in this case the left one as you're looking at the cardigan lying flat. To do this I'm going to use a 3.5mm needle, which is suggested in the pattern. I suggest you pick up 4 stitches and skip 1 stitch in order to keep a nice tension on your double knitting bottom band. So I'm going to pick up stitches all the way along this vertical edge, making sure that I pick up a stitch right at the end of the vertical section. So once I've picked up all of these stitches, I'll cut the working yarn, leaving a reasonably long tail to weave in later. At this point you should have all of your picked up stitches live on a cable needle and yarn ends at each end. So the next thing we're going to do is turn this over so that we're now looking at the wrong side of the garment, or the inside of the cardigan. And we're going to pull the cable needle through so that the needle is on the working needle is on the other end of the cardigan, so the bottom ribbing edge of the cardigan. Now we're going to get a new piece of yarn and make a slip knot. We're then going to place this slip knot on the working needle, so this is the one at the bottom edge of the ribbing with the wrong side of the cardigan facing you. So once you've positioned this slip knot onto the working needle, we're going to use a tubular cast on. So we're going to work in a 1x1 tubular cast on to cast on a total of 5 stitches, including the slip knot, with the first stitch being a purlwise stitch and the last stitch also being a purlwise stitch. So we're going to turn the garment around so the right side is facing us again, and at this point we should have 5 stitches on the working needle. We should be starting with a knitwise stitch, then purl, then knit, then purl, and then finishing with a knitwise stitch and a gap before we get to the picked up stitches on the needle. And start working the double knitted bottom band. So remember to use the working yarn, not the yarn tail, and knit 1, slip 1 with the yarn in front purlwise, knit 1, slip 1 with the yarn in front purlwise, and then knit 2 together through the back loop. We will then turn the work again and knit the second row of the double knitted bottom band. So here we will be slipping one with the yarn in front, knit one, slipping one with the yarn in front, knit one, and then finally slipping one with the yarn in front again. We're going to repeat these 2 rows for a total of 4 rows as seen on the right side. So this actually means 7 rows in total, because as you look at the garment from the right side, each knit stitch actually corresponds to 2 rows of double knitting. So you can see at this point here I have 4 knitted stitches seen from the right side, including the row that I just worked on the right side. So at this point we again turn so the wrong side of the garment is facing you, and then we begin knitting the buttonhole in the next row. So to do this, we slip one with the yarn in front, knit one, and then in the next step we will pick up 1 stitch knitwise by going under the 2 bars between the previous and the next stitch on both the right and the wrong sides of the garment. So hopefully you can see that here. So you want to pick up a stitch underneath these 2 bars that are between the 2 adjacent stitches on the right and the wrong side. So simply put your needle in underneath both of these bars and pick 1 stitch up. You should immediately see that this creates a hole in the double knitted band. This is quite a small hole, and I recommend not using buttons larger than 11mm, but make sure you check after a few rows that your button actually fits through the buttonhole. Then continue to the end of the row by slipping one with the yarn in front, knit one, and slip one with the yarn in front again. So now we turn back to the right side, we knit one, slip one with yarn in front, then knit the next stitch. However, you'll notice the next 2 stitches are actually purlwise stitches from the back or the wrong side of the garment. Hopefully you can see that here. So you'll want to slip both of these stitches with the yarn in front, then knit 2 together through the back loop. Turn your work back to the wrong side, slip one with yarn in front as normal. Then you should see that you have 2 adjacent knit stitches and you want to knit these together. So simply knit 2 together. Then work to the end of the row, again by slipping, knitting and slipping the last stitch. So hopefully you can see here that we have now formed a small buttonhole. As I said before, this buttonhole is quite small, so make sure you use a small button and check that your button can actually fit through this hole. If it can't, you can either find some smaller buttons or you can use an alternative method for making the buttonhole. to make a larger buttonhole. So if we're happy with this buttonhole, we now need to decide how far apart to make the subsequent buttonholes. So you can do this in a few ways, but the way that I would do this is to count the number of stitches that I have remaining. So not including the bottom band stitches, only the stitches that were picked up along the edge. So in this case, I had 51 stitches remaining. I'm planning to put 5 buttons on this cardigan in total. I've already made one buttonhole 4 rows up from the bottom of the garment. I now want to make a further 4 buttonholes, and I want my top buttonhole to be 3 rows from the top of the garment. So I'm going to take my total number of stitches remaining, which is 51, minus 3 for the top edge of the cardigan, and then divide this by 4. This gives me 12 rows between each buttonhole. So what I've done here is I've knitted the 12 rows as seen from the right side. So bear in mind again that this is double knitting, and you'll actually need to knit 2 rows for every row of stitches seen on the right side. Here I'm knitting the second buttonhole. So again, slip one with yarn in front, knit one, and then pick up 1 stitch under the 2 bars between the next 2 stitches to create the buttonhole. As you can see, this can be quite tricky, so don't worry if you can't get this right straight away. So here I've created a new buttonhole. Again, slip one, knit one, and slip one. In the next right side row, I'll be working the stitches as normal, except for these 2 adjacent slipwise stitches. So you can see that here, slip 2 purlwise, and then knit 2 together through the back loop. Then finally we complete the buttonhole on the wrong side by slipping one through with the yarn in front and then knitting 2 together, these 2 adjacent knit stitches, and then continuing to the end of the row as normal. So we're going to continue this, knitting 12 rows as seen from the right side and working a buttonhole, then working an additional 12 rows. And here I'm just clipping on a clip-on stitch marker to help me identify which row was used to make the buttonhole. Once you get to the top of the bottom band, make sure you end on a wrong side row. So in the last right side row, you will have knit the last picked up stitch together. So after this, you work one more wrong side row. So now you should have just your 5 bottom band double knit stitches left. So here you want to cut the yarn We're going to go in with the tapestry needle and do an Italian bind off. You can also use a Kitchener bind off by spreading your stitches onto 2 needles. So here we're going purlwise into the first knit stitch, knitwise into the first purl stitch, knitwise into the first knit stitch, slip that off the needle, purlwise into the second knit stitch, purlwise into the first purl stitch, knitwise into the next purl stitch, knitwise into this knit stitch, slip it off the needle, purlwise into the next one, purlwise into the purl stitch, and then at this point I find the needle can get slightly in the way, so I just slide that out, and then I go into the adjacent area, purlwise and then knitwise into the last stitch. And if you pull this nice and tight, you should get a nice neat top edge to your bottom band. Finally, you want to pull all of your yarn tails nice and tight and weave in all of the ends. If you find there's any bits that look a bit funny at this point, you can use this weaving in process to try and neaten things up as well. The left bottom band will be much easier. Just make sure you pick up the exact same number of stitches as you did on this bottom band and work it in the same way without any buttonholes. So here's the final product. You should have a very thin, narrow double knitted bottom band with small buttonholes. Thank you for watching this tutorial, and I hope you found it helpful.